The dusty station platform was nearly empty when Sarah stepped off the train, her worn leather suitcase clutched tightly in both hands. The Arizona sun beat down mercilessly, and she could feel beads of perspiration forming beneath the high collar of her traveling dress. She had been on trains for nearly a week, crossing half the country to meet a man she had never seen, whose words she knew only through carefully penned letters that had arrived at the boarding house in Boston with unfailing regularity for 6 months. Her heart hammered against her ribcage as she scanned the platform for Thomas Brennan, the rancher who had promised her a new life, a fresh start, and most importantly, a home. The advertisement in the newspaper had been simple. Respectable rancher seeks honest woman for companionship and marriage. Must be of good character and willing to embrace frontier life. She had responded on a whim, never truly believing anything would come of it, but his letters had been kind, thoughtful, and filled with descriptions of wide-open spaces and endless skies that made her cramped room in the city feel even smaller. But the platform remained stubbornly empty of anyone who might be waiting for a mail-order bride. Sarah's stomach twisted with a familiar anxiety. She fumbled in her reticule for the last letter, her fingers trembling slightly as she unfolded the worn paper. "I will meet you at the station on Tuesday, June 15th, at 2 o'clock, it read in Thomas's neat handwriting. She looked up at the station clock, its face nearly obscured by desert dust. Wednesday, June 16th, 2:15 in the afternoon. Her breath caught in her throat. She had missed it. Somewhere between Chicago and Kansas City, between one rattling train car and another, she had lost track of the days. The wedding was supposed to have been yesterday. She was a day late. Panic rose in her chest like floodwater. What was she supposed to do now? She had spent every penny she had on the train ticket. She had no family to return to, no home waiting for her back east. She had burned those bridges when she had accepted Thomas's proposal, telling her employer at the textile mill that she wouldn't be returning, giving up her room at the boarding house. Everything she owned in the world was in the suitcase at her feet and the small bag hanging from her shoulder. "You look lost, miss." The voice was deep and gentle, with a slight drawl that marked him as a man who belonged to this harsh, beautiful land. Sarah turned to find a tall man standing a respectful distance away, his white cowboy hat shading his face from the brutal sun. He wore a faded denim shirt, a bandana knotted at his throat, and a belt buckle that caught the light. His eyes, she noticed, were kind despite the concern in them. "I am," she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. "I was supposed to meet someone yesterday. I got my days confused on the journey. I'm afraid I've missed my own wedding." The man's expression shifted, something flickering across his features too quickly for her to identify. "You wouldn't happen to be Sarah Mitchell, would you?" Her eyes widened. "I am. How did you know?" He removed his hat, running a hand through his dark hair. "I'm James Brennan, Thomas's brother." He paused, and Sarah saw pain shadow his face. "I'm afraid I have difficult news, Miss Mitchell. Thomas passed away 3 days ago. A riding accident. His horse spooked during a storm, and he was thrown. Broke his neck. It was quick, at least. He didn't suffer." The world seemed to tilt beneath Sarah's feet. She reached out blindly, and James was there instantly, his strong hand steadying her elbow. "I'm so sorry," he said softly. "I came to the station yesterday to meet you, to tell you in person, but you weren't on the train. I thought perhaps you had changed your mind, or that Thomas's letter about the date hadn't reached you in time. I came back today, just in case." Sarah couldn't speak. She had never met Thomas Brennan, had never heard his voice or felt his hand in hers, but she had built a future around the idea of him. And now that future had vanished like morning mist in the desert heat. Worse, she was stranded in a strange town with no money, no prospects, and nowhere to go. "Miss Mitchell," James said gently, "I know this must be a terrible shock. Would you allow me to buy you some tea at the hotel? Give you a chance to catch your breath and figure out what you'd like to do." She nodded numbly, allowing him to pick up her suitcase and guide her down the platform toward the small town's main street. The hotel was modest but clean, and James secured a table in the corner of the dining room where they could speak privately. He ordered tea and sandwiches, though Sarah couldn't imagine eating anything. As they sat in awkward silence, Sarah studied Thomas's brother. He was handsome in a rugged way, with sun-weathered skin and calloused hands that spoke of hard work. There was a quiet strength about him, and a sadness that seemed to run deeper than just his brother's recent death. "Were you and Thomas close?" she asked finally, needing to fill the silence with something other than her own spiraling thoughts. James's jaw tightened. "We were. He was the better man of the two of us, truth be told. Optimistic where I tend toward practical. He saw the best in people. He met her eyes. He was excited about your arrival. Talked about you constantly these past few months. Read your letters aloud so many times I practically had them memorized." Sarah felt tears prick her eyes. "I wish I could have met him." "He would have made you happy," James said with certainty. "He had a gift for that." The tea arrived, and Sarah wrapped her hands around the cup, grateful for its warmth despite the heat of the day. "I don't know what to do," she admitted. "I have no money for a return ticket, and even if I did, I have nothing to return to. I gave up everything to come here." James was quiet for a long moment, his fingers drumming against the wooden table. "The ranch is mine now," he said finally. "Thomas left everything to me. It's a good property, profitable, but it's a lot of work for one man." He paused, seeming to choose his words carefully. Thomas made arrangements for a wife because he needed help running the place. That need hasn't changed just because he's gone. Sarah's heart began to pound again, but differently this time. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying that if you still need a home and a husband, and if you're still willing to embrace this life out here, then the offer stands. Not with Thomas, but with me." He held up a hand before she could respond. "I'm not asking you to decide right now. I'm not my brother. I'm more rough around the edges, not as easy with words or social niceties. I've been alone for a long time and set in my ways. But I'm honest, I work hard, and I'd treat you with respect. You'd have a home, security, and I'd never raise a hand to you or treat you unkindly." Sarah stared at him, her mind reeling. This was madness. She had arrived a day late to marry one man and was now being proposed to by his brother, a man she had known for less than an hour. Everything about this situation was improper, rushed, completely illogical. And yet, what choice did she have? She could try to find work in this small town, but respectable options for single women were limited. She could attempt to contact distant relatives back east who had made it clear they wanted nothing to do with her after her parents died. Or she could take a chance on this quiet, serious man who was offering her exactly what she had come west to find. "Why would you do this?" she asked. "You don't know me. I could be a terrible cook or have a dreadful temper. I could be lazy or dishonest or any number of things." A ghost of a smile touched James's lips. Thomas was a good judge of character. If he chose you, then you're worth choosing. And honestly, Miss Mitchell, you look about as desperate as I feel. Maybe we can help each other. There was a raw honesty in his words that touched something in Sarah's heart. This wasn't a romantic proposal or a declaration of love. It was a practical arrangement between two people who needed each other, stated plainly without pretense or flowery language. In a strange way, she appreciated that more than she would have appreciated pretty lies. "I should tell you," she said slowly, "that I'm not particularly skilled at frontier life. I can cook basic meals and keep a house clean, but I've never lived on a ranch. I've never been outside a city before this week. I might be more trouble than I'm worth." "We all start somewhere," James replied. "I'll teach you what you need to know. The question is whether you're willing to learn and whether you can be content with a simple life that's mostly hard work with occasional moments of beauty mixed in." Sarah thought about her life in Boston. The cold, cramped room. The endless hours at the textile mill, breathing in lint and dye fumes. The loneliness that had settled into her bones after her parents died, and she found herself truly alone in the world. She thought about Thomas's letters describing sunrises that painted the sky in colors she had never imagined, about the satisfaction of building something with your own hands, about the peace of vast open spaces. "I think I could be content with that," she said quietly. James nodded slowly. "Then if you're willing, we can head to the courthouse tomorrow morning. Get the legal part done. After that, I'll take you to the ranch. You can have Thomas's room to start. Give you time to adjust, to decide if you can really live with this arrangement. If after a few months you decide you can't, I'll find a way to get you wherever you want to go. You won't be trapped. That's very fair of you. Like I said, I'm not my brother. But I try to be decent. They sat in silence for a while longer, sipping tea and navigating the strange reality of their situation. Finally, Sarah spoke again. Can I ask you something? Of course. Why aren't you already married? A man with a successful ranch, from what Thomas wrote, you should have had your pick of local women. James's expression darkened slightly. I was engaged once, about 5 years ago. She was a doctor's daughter from town. Pretty, educated, seemed eager to be a rancher's wife. But when she actually spent time at the ranch, saw what the life truly involved, she couldn't do it. She left 3 weeks before our wedding. Married a banker and moved to San Francisco. After that, I figured it was easier to just stay alone. I'm sorry, Sarah said, and meant it. Ancient history, James replied, but she could hear the hurt still buried in those words. Point is, at least you know what you're getting into. No illusions about romantic love or easy living. Just 2 people trying to build something stable. The next morning, they stood before a judge in the small courthouse, with the clerk and his wife serving as witnesses. Sarah wore the same traveling dress she had arrived in, and James had simply dusted off his hat and put on a clean shirt. There were no flowers, no music, no celebration. Just words spoken solemnly and 2 signatures on a document that bound their lives together. As they walked out into the bright morning sun, James offered her his arm. Ready to see your new home, Mrs. Brennan? Mrs. Brennan. The name felt strange and foreign, attached to her but not quite part of her yet. I think so, Sarah replied, taking his arm. The ride to the ranch took nearly 2 hours in James's wagon, and with each mile, Sarah felt the city falling away behind her. The landscape was harsh and beautiful in equal measure, so different from anything she had known. James pointed out landmarks and neighbors' properties, his voice carrying an unmistakable affection for this land that was now hers as well. When the ranch house finally came into view, Sarah caught her breath. It wasn't grand, but it was solid and well-maintained, with a wide porch that wrapped around the front. Mountains rose in the distance, and she could see cattle grazing in the fields. It looked like the descriptions in Thomas's letters, and for a moment, her heart ached for the man she would never meet. James helped her down from the wagon and carried her suitcase up to the porch. As he unlocked the door, he turned to her with an expression she couldn't quite read. I know this isn't how you expected things to go, he said quietly. You came here a day late, and nothing turned out the way it was supposed to. But maybe, if we're both patient and willing to work at it, we can make something good out of this situation. Something real. Sarah looked at this man who was now her husband, this stranger who had offered her a lifeline when she had none, and she felt something shift inside her. It wasn't love, not yet, but it was possibility. It was hope. You were right, she said softly. James tilted his head, confused. About what? Yesterday, when I arrived at the station, I thought I was late. That I had missed my chance. Ruined everything. But maybe I wasn't late at all. Maybe I was right on time. She met his eyes. Right on time for you. For the first time since she had met him, James Brennan truly smiled, and Sarah saw in that smile the promise of a future she hadn't expected but might come to cherish. She took his hand, and together they walked through the door of the house that would become their home, ready to begin the unexpected journey that lay ahead.